But yeah, I mean, so
speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chasing Greatness podcast. I'm just kidding.
it's all good.
No, but super excited. Joined today by Kyle Wolff with 2 Fs, the host of We Built an Empire podcast.
Yes.
You want to know a fun fact that I learned yesterday about podcasting?
What you got?
Since I'm like, a big time successful podcast host myself now.
Yeah.
So I've I've dove in. No, but I found out that 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3. And then of the ones that do make it past episode 3, 90% don't make it past episode 20. And you are at 41 now.
Yeah.
So in the world of podcasts, you're actually like up there, which is really cool to think about. And well, it was cool. So, and I don't know if you listened to it or not, but it's I listened to the Modern Wisdom podcast. It's with Chris Williamson.
Yep.
I just love his content and like, trying to better myself, whether it's physically and that was a lot of like mental and optimizing life or whatever. But they were talking about it in the context of just simply not quitting.
Yeah.
And like how easy it can be to, with consistency, rise to the top. You have to just literally not quit. So I think it's cool that you're already at 41 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, so again, like how do you quantify success, right? So, I mean, I've said it on my show. I probably say it every episode. It's like we're so far from monetization on all platforms. Like we have a good, solid core listeners. Like, I mean, I know that we're going to get X amount of people listening. I know that certain people are going to call me and be like, that was a really great episode, man. I pulled this out of there. And sometimes it surprises me. It's like a person that I don't personally know, or maybe I had a loose relationship in freshman year of high school or something. But it's like, we're not monetized. So if you go into this thing being like, I want to be Joe Rogan, that's cool, right? That's a decent goal. That's an unrealistic goal in all reality. But if you go into it going, I want to make money in a year, like you're setting yourself up to fail, right? So it's, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, you could have done this and people would have thought you're crazy. Like, what is a podcast, right? If you were already in that loop and you were, had a good following, when podcasts really, really started to pop off 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you might have stood a chance of being like, okay, I'm one of the top, right? Now it's saturated in a sense to where there's just so much content out there from a podcast perspective. It's like, you've got to spend time. You've got to actually grow like a real listening audience that tunes in every single week in the analytics. And it just takes time and time and time. And the weird thing that's like, kind of is a little bit defeating. This is for anybody starting new, right? Is like, you'll have, oddly enough, like people kind of generate this presence around your podcast, and it starts to like really grow rapidly sometimes. Like you get your friends, your family, guests that have and it kind of like, it propagates outward. So you get this like spiral effect real quickly, and you'll have a couple of like banger episodes, right? Like, I mean, bangers, like out of nowhere, you're like, holy shit, we just got, can I cuss on there?
Yep.
Okay, we're cussing, ladies and gentlemen.
This is a safe space.
This is the tree.
Yeah.
So you'll have a couple banger episodes, and then you're like, okay, whatever we did worked. And then you have another good one. And it's like, all of a sudden you'll have this like dip. And you're like, why? What is going on? Nothing has changed. This was a great conversation. I mean, the context of it was like really, really like well delivered. The guest was engaged. And then all of a sudden it'll come back. And you just have this ebb and flow, and then you start to kind of realize, like, look, as how often do you listen to, like, Rogan's a bad example, right? The guy gets like 3 million listens to a podcast each, so bad. But like, let's just say like your next favorite podcast, right? So you hit it on Spotify, you start playing it, maybe 15 minutes in, and you drop out or you save it. You might not get back to that exact episode for 2 weeks. It depends on your life, right? And so you start to have to think that people have a life cycle, and it's like, you're not always going to just have these like huge, gigantic leaps. And so it's a slow burn. And going back to your comment, if you just maintain and stay consistent, which consistency, especially with guests, is very difficult. We were just talking about this on camera, and that's the hardest thing with my podcast is like, kudos to you for doing this in person, right? Huge advocate for in person, right? We know, I know what you smell like right now, man, right? So that there's
just don't tell anyone.
There's intimacy to that, and we can feed off of that. And if you say something that triggers me and sparks an emotion from me, we're going to get a different interaction than if you're on Zoom or if you're on Riverside or something. So we made a huge correction right off the bat to go in person, and That's hard because now you got to get people to make a time, like an actual physical time commitment. They got to drive to Bayfield because that's where our podcast studio is at. They got to come there. And so it's like there's a lot of things that go into that. So that makes it a little bit difficult in getting the guests in to maintain the consistency. But what you have to do sometimes is to fill that void. And apologies to any of my listeners that might be listening to this. Like, yeah, I do have a life outside of podcasting, and I missed a couple weeks in a row. But I will say that for 40 weeks straight, no, it would have been more than that so it'd be like 46 weeks straight. We dropped an episode undeniably Tuesday, 5 a.m. Right. So we've had a little bit of a break there, but the thing of it is we're coming back. We've got some episodes. I'm going to do some talking head stuff on some topics that have really been close to me, close to my family, close to home, close to the local, area that we live in. But I want to make sure that I get back to the consistency of every single week. Cause that's what I made a promise to myself. I was like, it has to be every week. You've got to show up. If people are going to show up for you, even if that's a subscribe on your YouTube or if that's a like on Instagram, you got to show up for the people. You got to deliver. Even if they don't, if the context of what you're talking about is not the best things you've ever delivered, you have to deliver something to them, right? And so it's been a couple of weeks, and like in a weird way, like I had this huge like almost outer body experience the other day, like way water depleted, and got into the sauna for far too long, and was just
hallucinating
in another planet, and then jumped immediately into the cold plunge, came out of that, and was just like, whoom, like my brain just went wham, I got to do this in the podcast. And yeah, so anyways, I don't know how we got on but this is your show.
No, I love it because the whole point of this is for me to learn from people. And I'm excited because, I have a lot to learn from you in terms of podcasting. I have a lot to learn from you in terms of business and life and, humanity and just everything. I've just been a huge fan of you ever since I've gotten to know you. So however we got on it doesn't matter. It's great content. So thank you. You had talked a little bit about like the ebbs and flows of the engagement with your show. Mm-hmm. Have you been able to figure out any variables or like consistencies? Why? I'm kind of curious. Like, I know we've talked about you have to just keep putting it out, not quitting.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like, have you been able to digest or realize, I got less engagement because it was too long, or because the thumbnail was different, or because the description was. I'm just curious if anything's like you've figured out any of that.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, I kind of know. So when we first started, you've got everything, right? You got your YouTube, which is the main. You can cut that into clips, 5 and 10 minute episodes, right? You can cut that into shorts, and you create this funnel. And everybody talks about the funnel, right? Shorts pull you into the clips pull you into the full length episode, because nobody wants to sit down and listen to long form episodes anymore. They don't want to listen to an hour and a half. Well, fuck you. My show's an hour and a half, right? And so when we first started, I just threw mud at the board to see what stuck, right? And obviously we got Instagram, we had TikTok at the time. I've since gone away from TikTok because I produce my show by myself. I mean, I'm the host, so I'm trying to do research. I'm doing all the editing, everything. And so there's a lot of time that physically goes. You have an hour and a half episode. You've got at least 10 to 12 hours of mixing that in post-production, cutting clips. Then you've got to all of a sudden manage your drops, right? What's going to hit? Okay, I picked the thumbnail. You can't do that by yourself. So at first, we just threw it out there to see what sticks. And the thing that does give you trafficked volume, right? Maybe even subscribers, like YouTube Shorts are doing really well. They're 60 seconds and you got to go. But if you look at the algorithm or the analytics, not necessarily the algorithm, they do get traffic to your page. But that's hard to quantify because they're looking at a short. The traffic, if you look at and YouTube does an excellent way of showing you what's winning people over to your channel. You might get subscribers, then you look at those same subscribers. They may not be a repeat subscriber after they looked at that one short. So, YouTube is awesome in the fact that you can build your numbers to start. Right? You can start really rapidly growing. I think right now we're at like 160,000 views on YouTube, which is awesome. But if you look at that from like your loyal fan base, it may not be comprised of loyal fans, right? And so where we've recently leaned into hard is to like just pick one, pick your outlet. Like, because it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort to do YouTube Shorts, YouTube clips. What do my thumbnails look like? Oh my God. Then I got to do Instagram.
Right.
Thank God that Instagram posts over to Facebook. So, but anyways, long story short is like, I have elected to pick one, right? Because what I found is that You can have a clickbaitable 60-second thing sometimes in an episode. Sometimes it really hits. But 90 seconds, in almost every single recording that you do, you can find 90 seconds of good quality content, right? And if people will stay, most of the time, if you look at the drop-off, they'll stay through 90 seconds. It's hard with 60. And so Shorts is not out. I still drop Shorts, but it's not delivering the content that I want in most episodes, because like I don't want to have to chop space. I want, if we say something and it hits you hard, like a visceral impact on whatever we're talking about, I want you to be able to breathe for a second in that short. I want the audience to know that it affected you and that it's affecting me like in kind. And so it's hard to do that with 60 seconds. So recently, or you know, we've actually leaned harder into, and I say we, right? Because we built an empire. So
you and your whole staff?
Yeah, my whole staff of one. So I lean into Instagram lately. And that does not necessarily get people from Instagram's platform over to YouTube. So you still have to kind of work and massage YouTube as well.
Right.
But for me personally, for the short clips, I want those to ring true with somebody. More so oftentimes more so than the whole episode.
Right.
Because I know that I can't always get that person out there to just go in and watch, but something that a guest says in 90 seconds can have a profound impact at times on somebody listening to that. And to me, you kind of start to dwindle it down. Like I hope and I pray that that person that clicks that reel gets over to YouTube. The chances are it's not going to happen. So my mind is shifted in the fact of let's make it to where that 90-second clip can have an impact on someone.
Yeah.
Right? The episode is most important, absolutely the most important to me. But if I can't get them to listen to the episode, I want them to get something out of 90 seconds, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like especially with the Instagram, the short videos on Instagram and Reels, like obviously there's some algorithmic benefits to that. But I think it's also the best way to engage with your guest. Mm-hmm. Add them as a collaborator, or they share the reel or whatever,
sure.
Which I think probably then expands the sphere of influence. You've got some more exposure. But to your point, yeah, I'm imagining it's very difficult to go from one platform to the next.
Yeah.
This is my third episode,
sure.
So I'm like a big time, I'm a huge expert. But so one of the things I'd love to, well, actually, before I dive in, I want to talk about your electric business.
Sure.
But before that, you mentioned the sauna and the cold plunge.
Oh yeah.
Do you have both at because I remember at Facebook, you were looking for a sauna a while back.
Jokingly enough, I was looking for a sauna. I wasn't, my thought is that, I had only ever done dry sauna, right? Or I don't even really, so the one that, has a steam, but it's not like a just all
it's not
steam.
A steam room.
Yeah, it's not a steam room. I'd only ever done that, right? So that was my experience. But then you start looking at I follow a couple of people and I look at these saunas and I'm like, man, this is awesome. But a 2-person sauna was like $6,500. And I'm like, okay. Again, my channel's not monetized, so we're not. So my wife and I actually looked at and got a infrared sauna, a 2-person infrared, and I read all the reviews on it. We got the ones that have way less EMF, and so anyways, it's just in our garage. And so for anybody, I've done a ton of research. Like you will still sweat your ass off in an infrared sauna.
My parents have one.
If you get in there right after a workout, like a hard 30-minute HIIT workout, like you're going to sweat like nobody's business. So yeah, I've been doing the sauna and then so right now, like I don't have a defined cold plunge, right? It's just right now it's actually the kiddie pool in the backyard.
Yeah, nice.
So, and the water's freezing cold right now. So it's doing the trick. But, for me, like I'll just real quick, we'll just kind of go through it, but like, July 20th, I kind of embarked on this, what I call this like new journey in life, right? And there's, I believe that there's always different journeys and tangents you can go on. And so my wife and I, she had a conference in Denver. And so we drove up there that morning. I stepped on the scale. It was 232 pounds, right? And I'm 5'9.5" on a good day, right? So I step on the scale. We go up there to this conference. We have an amazing time. It's like fully catered. We elected to leave the conference, go to a comedy show, which we had never been to a sit-down comedy show. It was so enjoyable. We get back to the hotel, have a bottle of wine. It's an amazing, amazing night. Thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. Wake up that next morning, not hungover, not just riddled with anxiety, like, oh my God, did I get drunk? Did I ruin somebody's life? Did I ruin my marriage? What did I do? Oh my, and so we're driving to the mall to pick up something before we're leaving Denver. And I just look over and I was like, I'm good with drinking anymore. Like I'm solid. And this was the first time, like in my adult life, that I had
the chills.
Yeah. Hopefully it helps somebody, man, that might be struggling with it. So, it was the first time, I had tried to like quit drinking in the past, and be like, but usually it was after a binge night of drinking or a horrible party of, frat party or something. And you're like, I feel like shit. Like, what did I do? I don't remember where I left my keys. And you're like, I got to quit drinking. And you quit for a weekend or 2 weeks or whatever, sometimes a year, and you bounce back. But for this journey that I'm on right now, I woke up without any anxiety and was like, I'm good with this. I don't need this in my life. Like I really, truly don't. And it wasn't like I was an alcoholic, but I did drink every day. I would have a White Claw, and everybody makes fun of me, but like, that's, trying to like, I don't like the taste of beer. It's not my thing, And so, but, it was like, I was drinking because it was just a part of that time, the physical time, 5 to 10 o'clock at night. I was just drinking, like wasn't getting drunk, wasn't getting hammered, was waking up the next morning, doing well in life, doing everything. And it was like, why is this such a part of who I am? Why is this so ingrained into who I am? Like even people that I hang out with, the events that I do, it's like, it always involved alcohol. And so anyways, after this event that my wife took me on in Denver, I woke up and it was like, all right, we're good. And so since July 20th, I know that seems, very minuscule in a time frame. I completely switched my diet to a caveman diet. I completely started working out every single day. I'm doing sauna every day. I'm doing cold plunge, and I've lost 23 pounds. And for me, I feel better. My mind like is racing like it used to. Like it, and the sense of wonder is back. Like not when I was a kid, but when I was a youth. It was like I feel like the person that I forgot. It's been so long, since like 18 on. It was like everything I did, like camping, going to sporting events. It always involved alcohol, and I've been fit through that. Like I've gotten back down to like 190 pounds and just like ripped as shit. Again in my adult life, but still drinking. And I'm like, and so for me, I just cut it. And I'm like, I'm good. I don't need it. And this time I've been able to go to parties. I've been able to go to barbecues. I've been camping and not drink and not even want to. And that's been super, super cool. So I didn't mean to go on a huge tangent.
I'm so glad you did.
The sauna and the cold plunge thing for me has been for a while, this like mental, put yourself through absolute mental hell and physical hell to realize that what you have is great.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you literally gave me I literally have the chills right now, because I relate so much to what you just said. So I had my last drink on June 28th, and I haven't had a drop of alcohol since. And I'm feeling incredible, like indescribable. So I struggle with anxiety in pretty big ways. And it's been really frustrating for me because my anxiety has presented itself in things that I used to love, things that I used to really be passionate about, specifically outdoor adventures. Like I used to go and hunt and hike and explore and wildland firefight and all these things that like I used to just do it. And over time, I've developed a pretty significant amount of anxiety that has built up. And I've been actively working on it through exercise and sauna and, cold exposure and whatever. But I turned 33 on June 29th. June 28th, we drove up to my parents' house. We were staying up there for something. I don't even remember why we were up there. But they live in Utah and the liquor store was closed. And I remember being like pissed. Like, it's my birthday and the liquor store's closed. I was all like, but I didn't drink. And then I was like, hey, the next day I was like, I feel pretty good. And then I was like, how cool would it be if like it was on my birthday that I stopped, that I didn't drink. And so now I haven't drinking since. And it literally gave me the chills hearing you talk about that because, so it's been another interesting thing too, is the whole premise of this is like chasing greatness. And I'm talk to people that inspire me. And, granted, this is only my third episode, but alcohol has come up in all three conversations, and so has mental health, which I think is insightful, in terms of like having conversations with people that are actively trying to better themselves and, be on these journeys. So I'm curious, do you think you'll ever go back?
I don't know. I mean, the thing of it is I will never let it capture me again, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that I won't ever have a drink again, right? But in my mind, it better have a profound impact on the experience.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a fucking profound, because unlike you, it was hard. The first day driving home from Denver, I was hungover driving, like, or a little bit, just like, we tore down Denver. Like, we had a really good time. Yeah. It was enjoyable. So kind of got through that. And then the next 2 days following that, I had full on withdrawals, like no joke. And I say I was an alcoholic, I didn't get drunk, and maybe that is signs of an alcoholic, but it was such a part of my daily habits that, I mean, I had 100% withdrawals, like shakes, feeling miserable, headaches. And it was just that alcohol, the sugar, and the fact that I was severely overweight, I mean, and I still have much room to improve, and I'm continuing to do so. But it was very difficult. And I mean, it was nowhere near like a heroin withdrawal, like I've read and I've heard about stories, but it was a withdrawal, and I did enjoy it. It was so unenjoyable.
How long did that last? Like, when did you start feeling good?
2 full days. So we drove. So that was a Thursday. We went up. We drove back on a Friday. Saturday, Sunday, I felt like dog shit. And by Monday, I was like, okay, I can do this. But on Monday, so this is how my brain works, right? This is me being the dipshit that I am. So I'm going, all right, well, here's the deal. I'm already pushing myself through hell, getting off of this alcohol. Let's do the next step. What are we doing? What's the next phase?
Make it a little worse.
Yeah, let's make it a little worse. See how deep we can go into this rabbit hole. And so I had actually been doing a lot of research, and you hear Rogan, you hear Jordan Peterson, you hear everybody talk about it, and they advocate for the caveman diet. I wanted an article that was down the middle, right? Showed the pros and the cons. And I found this really good article. If I can find it again, I'll send it to you. But, and the guy went through and like, here's the good and the bad, right, of both sides of this type of diet and not being on this diet and having kind of a balanced thing. And I just looked at it and I was like, you know what? The pros in this moment in my life are outweighing the cons, and I'm going to go for it. So Monday, I started the caveman diet. And so it's like, okay, if you haven't already felt like shit, let's go ahead and go
cut sugar.
Yeah, cut sugar,
carbs.
cut carbs, which I already didn't. I never really ate a lot of carbs. Like I just don't.
And that's exceptionally difficult because when I stopped drinking, I crave sweet. I mean, I eat so many cookies now. Yeah. It's a problem. So I know how hard that is to cut out alcohol and sugar.
Yeah, yeah. So I did it. I mean, but the thing of it is I think in a weird way that it kind of helped me focus on something else that also sucked. Like, so switching to caveman was shittier than the feelings of not having the alcohol.
Really?
Yes. But then I was like, I know, like I had been on the Atkins and all other stuff before. And like you call it like the carb flu or the Atkins flu. And it's like basically your body just feeling like garbage getting off those carbs. And so it was like, I was just adding fuel to the fire of like, okay, you're still feeling like crap or you're still feeling the desire to want to drink, but let's hammer it with doing this caveman thing. And then but by the end of the week, I was actually like, you know what? This is not bad. Like I'm good. I'm ready to rock and roll. And so I've continued it since. And doing a steady like HIIT workout routine every single day. I don't care if a doctor calls you about this and says you need to take day break. Nah, nope, that's for the birds. I'm not taking a break. I don't. There's no days off. There's none of that shit. I mean, there's been times like 2 days last week. It was late nights, and I was working out at 11 o'clock at night. Got in the sauna for 40 minutes after that. Got in the cold plunge. I got to bed at 1. Had to wake back up. I'm like, this whole like take a break to recover bullshit. Right now, I will say that with no alcohol on the caveman diet, plenty of water, I will work out till I can't lift or move at all, get in the sauna. And the next day I wake up, 0 pain, 0 joint pain, 0 muscular fatigue. I can do the same exact workout the following day. And I don't know how that's happening. I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe someone would say, oh, you're not working out hard enough. Like, well, come work out with me. Yeah. Like, come on. No, let's do it. Because, I mean, if I'm not, I guarantee you that by the time you go from this side of my garage to the sauna, you would want to change your clothes because you're dripping sweat and you're like so just like.
Can we do a workout together?
Yeah, let's do it. Sure.
Do I ever watch Cameron Haynes' podcast?
Yeah.
And they do the lift, run, shoot.
Oh, God.
And he makes them like grinds them to the ground and then makes a podcast.
But Cam is like another. he's out of this world.
Out of this world.
He's a freaking beast, man.
Yeah.
So no, he definitely gets after it. You know, he gets a lot of shit from everybody online, or not everybody, but a lot of people, some haters. But yeah, the guy just flat gets after it.
Yeah.
So. But anyways, to answer your sauna cold plunge, that was also part of this journey, right? So I could go to Ignacio and get in that sauna, and that's great. I love it. I try and do that at least once a week because it's a different kind of cook.
Yeah.
But I needed to have zero excuse. And at 10:30 at night, after soccer practice and work and you can't go to the rec center.
Right.
You can't get in the sauna. So cut out that excuse, put one in your garage. If you don't go and do what you said you're going to do, then you're an absolute bitch.
Right.
There ain't no way. There's no getting around it.
Simply do it.
Yes. Get up, do the workout, right? And a lot of people, I've heard a bunch of people be like, you know, you need to check the size of your pond, right? That's a classic term. You know, like if you're the big fish in the pond and you're working out, like there's nobody going to push you up. My thing about it is I work out alone, but I do it because I need to remind myself daily, if no one else is there, what kind of person are you going to be? Are you going to be that person that says, "Oh, you know what? I could skate this day. I'll get it tomorrow." You know, and those days have happened. Like, right? I've been that mentally tired and be like, "Okay, here's the way your mind works, Kyle. You know that if you skip today, you're doing not only tomorrow's workout, but you're doing today's workout, and you're going to do double the sauna and double the cold plunge. You know that's how your brain works. So get your ass in the garage. I don't care if it's 10:30 or 11 or midnight.
And get
done. The workout done, because I want to make sure that I'm accountable to myself. Nobody's there. There's no camera out here. You know, we're not filming ourselves for Instagram to show these people, oh, I'm working. I'm in my garage working out. Please applaud me. Please let me know that I'm doing good.
Looking for the affirmation.
Yeah, we're in here because you committed to yourself.
Yeah.
So are you going to do it? And so the thing of it is the sauna, and shortly here the pool will be down, so I got to get a cold plunge. But it's like the sauna's right there. It takes 22 minutes to heat up to full temp. You have no excuses, zero excuses.
Get it in.
Get in there and get it done.
I love it. I just bought a hot tub, and I'm picking it up on Saturday. And then we've got like a horse trough in the backyard and I've bought a whole bunch of Tupperware.
Oh yeah.
You know, like cheap Tupperware that I have in my chest freezer, frozen, and you know, all of that good stuff. But I just think it's so cool. You know, a lot of it's so interestingly aligned with the whole point of why I'm trying to do this anyway, is that I'm finding these things that are making me happy and making me feel fulfilled and making me, you know, feel like I'm being the best version of myself. And you said something when you were talking about that journey that just I relate to in such a huge way. I was telling my wife it the other day. We took the kids and we just hiked up to Spud Lake, which, believe it or not, and here's me being a little vulnerable because we live in Durango and it's all these like extreme. That was a big thing for me because I used to get anxiety doing that.
You get anxiety because you're taking your kids now with you and you're like worried or protective mode or like what?
Yeah, I think that it's like I feel like I have to, you know, make sure that there's all these things in place that if something were to go wrong, the family's fine. If we got lost or if there was a fire or weather came in or an animal or, you know, I had like future trip on all these things. And we went up to Spud Lake and just had a ton of fun. And you know, didn't overpack, didn't overthink, went up and did it, and it was great for me. And I was telling my wife about it afterwards, and because you had said something about kind of feeling like you're an older version of yourself, in feeling like you're a past version of yourself. I was telling that to my wife that I feel like I'm like college Ben again, and it's exhilarating. Like I have a passion for stuff again, and I'm feeling energized, and it's amazing too. Like. And you know, it's not just alcohol; it's exercising. It's, you know, putting in the work and things like that. But I think that it's wild because you start to realize like how far you can go without some of that stuff. Like I'm grinding right now. I'm working out like crazy. I'm running a company that's rapidly growing. Of course, you know, started a podcast, trying to build a personal brand, writing blogs, being a parent, and like it's there. You know, you can do it. You just have to your point. Simply do it. Yeah. You know, keep doing the work, show up and get it done, regardless of how you feel. Like if you don't feel like it, which I just think it's fascinating that has come up in all of my conversations so far on the show is, you know, people arriving at the same conclusion, but in different ways, which I think is super insightful.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard too, because it's ingrained in American lifestyle, right? It really is. Like there's definitely a small sliver of people that, don't actually imbibe in alcohol. It's really small. And, so it's like you start to equate those events, camping, those, whatever that may be, as just being part of, that style of living. You start to just say, okay, well, we're going to go there, and you just know, you don't even think about drinking. We're just going to have a drink, or we're going to do this.
Yeah, it's like, I can't quit because we're going camping next weekend.
Yeah.
Or whatever. You brought up camping too, so since I've been sober, I've been on several camping trips. My family and I had a nightmare travel delay situation where we end up having to stay the night in Dallas a few nights and like all that stuff. Stayed sober through that. But I think the one I'm most proud of, and for me, which it was probably the most profound moment too, is my brother got married, and I was the best man in the wedding. And so I did all of the best man, all the groomsmen stuff the night before, and the rehearsal dinner, and stayed at the Airbnb with everybody or whatever, and then the wedding, and I did the best man speech and all of that, and I even danced like an idiot. And I like there's photos of me with a backwards hat on and my collar popped and getting low and doing the whole thing, and it was really cool because I genuinely believe I had just as much fun as anybody, if not even more fun than anybody. I had to intentionally choose to do so. Like I had to know that this is important. I need to drink some extra caffeine or whatever and make it fun. But I had a wonderful time. Yeah. And I remember every moment of it. It was crystal clear memory. And then the next morning I woke up and murphed. It felt great the next morning. So it's just cool. It's so cool to hear the parallels with that. So congratulations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Congratulations to you too.
I cheer for you loudly because I really believe that the best versions of us are what the world deserves, and what your kids deserve, and your business or your dreams or whatever. And I just think it's really cool that the best version of you is getting is existing, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm smiling, right? Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, when you start to lose your smile, you start to lose a little bit of your soul, and it's sometimes you just find yourself in a weird numb place. And you can't describe it, you can't figure it out. And whether it's from the world just not giving you a fucking break, sometimes you get into it and you start to kind of realize like you're just not smiling inside. And I say I'm smiling again. Like right now, like, I'm happy. Like, and it did. It took, don't get me wrong, it took 3-4 weeks before I was less awkward around people, right? It's because like I wanted to make sure that time I had, like if I'm going to be sober at this event, I want to enjoy my time to the utmost ability. And I start, and even still now, like I'm okay with being in certain applications, but I found myself in some situations the other day where I was just like, you know what, this is not fun. Maybe the Kyle that had a good buzz on thought that this would be a good idea, and and that's fine. That's all good, and I love all those guys that I was with. But for me personally, it's like, no, I'm good. I can spend my time doing something else that actually I get true fulfillment from, and I'm starting to kind of realize that. And I talked to a friend about that the other day. I was like, hey man, am I being weird? Is this me being an asshole? And he's just like, I think you're starting to smile again. Like you're starting to remember the things that you stopped or you forgot along the way that you actually enjoyed. Like you may not enjoy that. You might have gotten through it and you might have faked a laugh because you had a little bit of alcohol in your system, but like, did you actually at your core love it? Probably not. I can tell you right now, as a sober person, I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. I love those people individually, absolutely. As a group, absolutely. But the situation was like, you know what? I can do something better with my time, with my family, with my work, with my life that I know I'm going to get more enjoyment and fulfillment out of than this scenario. And I don't think I would have realized that had I not been, sober. And so I don't know.
Have relationships changed?
With my wife?
Just in general?
No.
Lost friends, made friends, closer?
No. I mean, I'm sure along the way, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of a homebody anyways. I mean, my closest friends know me. Like they realize there's let's say 5 times out of 10, I'm not going to answer that phone call. I'm just not. I'm doing something. If you love me and you know I love you back, you know that I'm going to get a hold of you eventually. You know that we're still going to be friends. But like this life we have, and I struggle with this, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, but like this life we have is so short, you know, and it's hard not to allow life, whether it be work or friends or whatever, to encroach onto the things that you cherish the most. For me, that's my family, that's my time. And sometimes that's my work. That's a passion project. That's the podcast. That's this. And it's hard for me to sometimes allow the outside world to come into that. And I don't mean outside like people that I don't know. It's like there's a line. And sometimes I'll pick and choose when I'm going to answer that phone. My closest friends know that, and they're okay with that. The other people that are just there in this life with me, if they can't accept that, or if I'm quicker to make a decision to leave that scenario that I'm in because I'm not enjoying it, fuck off. Like I really, you know, I don't, if our relationship is only a relationship or was because of there was alcohol involved, then that relationship was meant to die. It was doomed from day one anyways. So we're both better off if we just cut it right down the middle and just say, cool, I don't wish you any malice at all, but you know, I'm good, man. And you should be good too. But you know, my wife is, you know, again, she's the strongest person I've ever met. Like she's just solid to the fucking core. And, no, you know, she's basically stopped drinking a few drinks here and there, but it's not because of what I'm doing. And I've told her like, you want to drink, do your thing. This is for me internally. And, yeah, she's like happy. She's pleased. She's like, go get it, go work out. Like, absolutely. Like I got the kids, or, you know, if I'm at home randomly at noon because I know I got something coming up and I'm in the gym, you know, she's like, hey, you know, good job working out. That relationship's only gotten stronger. But her and I we're I mean, like peanut butter and jelly, dude. Like, I mean, honestly, like nothing will ever break us. Nothing. You know, the only thing that will ever break us is if we allow ourselves to get so lost with each other.
Yeah.
Like me and her, we will be the only thing to ever break us, because there's been some shit that has happened in our lives. Nothing in this outside world can break us.
Yeah.
I promise you that. Nothing. So she's there for sure. But you know, if anybody hears this, I'm not trying to say cut people out of your life because you got to make a change. You know, you listen to the 12-step program. That works for a lot of people. Congratulations. You know, and part of that is like repenting for your sins and making amends with past ones, you know, and it's like, you know, but that's not where I'm at. It's not me. You destroy or burn bridges. It's just, you start to realize real quickly that if you give that time to that person, if it's not reciprocal, if you don't get something equal and opposite back from it, then that's a loss to you, not to that person.
Right.
You know, like, so it's hard. It's like, you got to get enjoyment out of every second of life, you know, or at least plan to, because there's going to be those little divots that come in and they suck, you know,
or at least have the stuff that's not enjoyable, purposeful.
Exactly.
You know, cause like there's hard things. Like you're going to have to struggle and grind or do the thing you don't want to do. But as long as it's like for an end goal that's greater than the hard is, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which I think is kind of an interesting way to look at that too. Cause it can't all be good, but at least hopefully then you choose the hard, and that the hard contributes to a better good long-term, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It really does. Thinking about what I just said, I just hope that your audience, listening audience or watching audience,
it's an enormous audience.
Yeah, it's massive. I just hope they don't understand that. Like, I'm not advocating for just cutting people out of your life because you're making a mental change or a shift in your own life, right?
Well, I do think though. So one thing I've experienced, and it's kind of, I'll try to think how to articulate it properly, but I've been on a journey as well. And mine has been in a lot of ways holistic. You know, alcohol has been one component of it. Physical fitness has been a huge component of it. My mental health has been a huge component of it. My relationship with my wife and how I parent and building a business and, you know, personal finances or whatever. I've just kind of been on this journey for a few years now of trying to be the best version of myself that I can be. And it's going to sound weird, but it's lonely. And so it's not even like necessarily cutting people out, just that on a different path, you know, just headed somewhere else. Yeah. Not necessarily that that's better or worse or good or bad or, you know, anything like that. But I have found it's kind of a lot like what you're talking about with protecting your energy with those dynamics, and if it's not working, let it end. It's no big deal.
Sure.
I think it's a kind of a lot of that as we all kind of progress and evolve, we realize like I've got to do what I've got to do. I've got to stay on my path because I'm on a journey.
Yeah.
And you hope that the people in your life are on a journey as well. But I think that sometimes there's like this tug of war. Whose journey are we on right now?
Sure.
Where when we were young, there wasn't a journey, man.
Yeah,
like
it was a ride.
It was so great to go hang out at the buddy's house, play beer pong, do whatever. And I think that those dynamics by nature are more conducive to friendships.
Yeah.
To like those type of relationships. And then once you start heading somewhere, though, so I had, and I want to get back to remind me about the smile comment
Gotcha.
that you said. But you talked about how, I forget exactly what your words were, but you essentially were talking about how life is short, and
it's fleeting.
Life is fleeting. So I ran a marathon on Saturday, and at mile 22, which you've run marathons, you know how painful mile 22 is. It's like the moment, like it's like the hardest part. I didn't know the marathon had a new course, and at mile 22, I ran past my grandparents' old house. And so I'm in this immense amount of physical pain. It's also kind of this microcosm for like this journey that I've been on, because I was crushing the marathon too, by the way. But I ran past my grandparents' house, who have since passed. So they've passed a while back, and this flood of thoughts entered into me of like, my parents don't have parents, and someday I won't have parents, and someday my kids won't have parents. God willing, let's hope it goes in that order. But it was so crystal clear for me that and I'm like metaphorically running this marathon while I'm also on a marathon of life and trying to improve, running past a clear example of how fleeting life is. And it became so crystal clear that we have to do the best things we can do, even though sometimes they're painful, like getting the workout in the garage or sitting in the sauna or whatever it might be, because it really is fleeting. And I hope that at least someday at the end of all this, for me, it's all a success if somebody's talking at my funeral and everybody's like, well, Ben left it all on the field.
Yeah.
He held nothing back. There's a thing I saw the other day that was that hell is when who you are meets who you could have been. I was like, kind of hit me hard.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to that. I mean, I've struggled with that many a times, of just like finding yourself at like the end of this road and just kind of feeling defeated and starting to work yourself backwards through your mind of like, who you are. And it's like, I think we start to define ourselves by most often what we do as a profession, right? You are an electrician, you are a plumber, you are a business owner. And that's hard when those things take a hiccup or they crash and burn, right? And they melt down around you and like your whole world is done. It's hard to kind of think past the fact of like, what am I? Because I align myself with that so closely that that's what I was, that's who I was, that's who I am, right? And so I think that a lot of times when you are met with these like hardships, and they could be self-inflicted hardships with workout or struggle or things like that, you have a moment and an opportunity to sort of micro redefine yourself.
Ooh, I like that.
You can beat that battle. You can beat that demon for just a second. It's going to eventually kick your ass, right? It's going to eventually get you down. But, I struggled. I mean, after, I had to, now I say I shut down because I shut down my company, right? Because the conversation can go for 2 hours if I lengthen it. But the reality of it is we, I previously owned an electrical company, and we had great successes. We grew so fast, and that's where I hear, like you saying, you're growing, right? And growth is great as long as it's smart and projected, and you stick to your projections. When you supersede those projections and you think you know better than the economy, that's when you get fucked. And we did. We got royally screwed. We we underbid a job and we lost our asses, and we were such a small company that we had to shut the doors, literally and figuratively. And I had to personally file for bankruptcy. My partner had to file for bankruptcy. We had people coming in there, literally grabbing things, liquidating everything. You want to talk about being defeated? Holy cow. I invested every dollar I had ever saved my entire adult life into this company. We had 32 guys. We had 4 office admin. We had, just before all this happened, we had dropped down to 3. So I employed my brother, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my wife. They were all on payroll, And so I just screwed up, man. And I couldn't escape it. I couldn't get away. And I tried to go back into business with my younger brother. And, and we did really good for kind of a small outfit. It was just me and him. It was good to kind of get back on my tools, get around like being defeated, but ultimately left and went to Texas, right? And so in Texas, it was great because I worked so much that I kind of masked the struggles, the mental health issue that was just sitting there, right? Just like a freaking balloon ready to pop. And then COVID hit, and, we got our hours cut just like everywhere else, but we were essential employees. So we had to go to work, right? The governor of Texas was like, nope, you got to go. So we did have to work 40 hours a week, but it was, no joke, half of what we were working. We were working so much, guns a-blazing, and the money was great. And it was just buy whatever you want, kids. It's all good. We got it in the bank. And that all changed for the country. And I'm speaking about me, but it all changed for the country, overnight. And it allowed me to start to reflect on what the fuck are you doing in Texas? Like, what are you doing? And I will never forget this moment. I've talked about it at nauseum. I was driving down a dirt road, and I had just downloaded songs. A lot of guys down there listen to like Texas dirt road music, right? And they're always sharing music with me and stuff. Oh, I got to listen to this, and it was really great. And they had turned me on to Ashley McBride, and so I'm listening to it, and her song "Girl Next Door" comes on, and I think it's off her first or second album. But either way, it I don't know why, I don't know how, but it struck a chord with me so viscerally that I had to pull over on this dirt road, and I shit you not, man, I broke down physically, mentally. I'm crying like a baby. I never cried like that. I'd shed a couple of tears, like out of anger most of the time. Like we're just so furious that like you're kind of like those emotions are really, really close to each other that you're crying. I had never cried like this, and I didn't know why I was crying. And I honestly sat there for 30, 35 minutes and it was like it popped. All the stress, just bottle it up. And one moment, a note out of a song, a vocal that this lady with a beautiful voice articulated. It was like the needle in the boom, and went on about my day. And from that point forward, though, it was like something had changed in me. Like I was far more emotional, and I was like, not with anger, but with sadness, and with this just like feeling of like not being able to define who I was, like as a person or as a father or as a husband, and being like, what is wrong? And that song is really weird. If you listen to it, it's kind of like she had people in her life that were basically negative towards her dreams. Like she wanted to chase being a musician, and then she got there, and then all of a sudden they came back. Okay, well, we heard you on the radio, but don't forget the people that were back home when you fail, and it was this constant like battle. And she's kind of like giving like a fuck you, and not bad for a girl. Not bad for a girl going nowhere. Yeah. And so the song really doesn't actually ring true, but I had to rush to Texas to escape what I had began to define myself as. I had to get away from it because I didn't know how to fix it. It was so defeating to go, talk to Bruce Daniels at that time at Kogan Builders and be like, Bruce, like, can I please just have some work, with my brother and I. They had seen every iteration. We had the lion's share of Kogan's work. We had a ton of work with all these builders in town. We had a ton of work with Red Cedar, and all these people I knew for years, like that were like, man, you're kicking ass, Kyle. Like, holy shit, you're really growing. Like to go back and look them in the face and be like, I failed. Like I didn't fail. I failed all 30 of those guys and their families and my own family. I failed miserably. And to go back and to talk to them and be like, can I please, I'm begging you, I need a little bit of work to survive. Me and my brother need this house. And, bless Bruce's heart. Some people hate him. Some people love him. I'm on the love side. The guy stuck up for me when nobody else would in this working world. and got us just a little bit of stuff. But either way, I felt like every grocery store I went to, every movie, if I bumped into somebody, I kept having to constantly like apologize. I felt like I was going through the 12-step program. It's where I was like having to apologize to all these people that I had failed or that I felt embarrassed around because I had to shut down my company, that I did something right. And so I'm sitting in Texas and I'm realizing that, like, what are you doing here? Like, this is not the answer. Like, Texas is not the answer. And we did enjoy our time there. We enjoyed being alone, and we grew as a family because we got there and we didn't know anybody. And then COVID hit and we couldn't know anybody, right? We didn't have the opportunities. And so we got really close with each other, and that still carries through to today. And so that's a lot of like my friend base, they do want to hang out a lot, but we're totally comfortable with just the four of us. We learn real quickly that that's all we need sometimes. But so anyways, we ultimately moved back here, but I knew coming back here is that, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back and be an electrician? Am I going to go back and call Bruce and say, hey, Bruce, I'm back in town. I'd like to take another shot at being an electrician and grow this company again. To do what? To prove to who that I'm worthy? Everybody else? And right. So I knew that I wasn't there yet on my journey. I'm still not finished with this journey, but I knew at that moment when we were coming back that, like, I didn't owe anybody shit. I didn't owe anyone an apology. Like, I had already fought those demons and freaking wore that burden as a badge of honor for long enough to where it like literally it almost started to destroy me. It made me have to really, really work through some mental health issues. But thankfully I had clear enough of a mind at that time to be like, I don't owe anybody. But if I go back into the industry that I've been a part of for 17 years, I will inevitably feel like I have to apologize to all of them.
So you made a change for you.
I had to, and people think I'm crazy. Like, oh, you're so flighty. We can't trust you. Like, because you've done this and you've changed iterations of your company's names and all this stuff. And like, the reality of it is I was trying to salvage 31 jobs.
Right.
And that's not just 31 people. All of them had kids. And so I was trying to do everything I can as a human being, sacrificing myself, my bank account, finding a company that they could land at and work and continue, right? That's not what everybody sees. They see the fact that you went from this company to this company to this company. With all 31 of those people, I was trying to make sure that they could have something.
Right.
I can't promise you anything past this, but here's a job and they're willing to pay you. And it's all of our same work, and we're just going to rake it over the table and keep you in the same job, keep working for the same clients. You just have a different pay stub.
Right.
Different logo. And so if I came back, though, I knew that I was going to have to apologize or feel guilty to all these people in this industry again. And so I had to make a decision right then and there. And I didn't come upon that decision until I was sitting in a hotel room in in Montana by myself, working windmills. I got a really good opportunity to go up there and work for 3 months, made insane amounts of money because I knew whatever I was going to do, it was going to take time and money. So I had to have a cushion.
Yeah.
And so I went up there and I was alone. I mean, I didn't know anybody. I knew one person on this crew. He was my boss, but he was staying in a whole nother town. I was in this hotel room that was barely bigger than your studio here. And I was miserable. And I decided I need a change and I got to do something different. And it was real estate. I don't even know why, realistically. I had a friend tell me, why don't you just be a real estate agent? That's cool. That sounds good enough for me. Let's do that. And then fast forward, right? We're 3 years into it. This year's obviously been different, not only the industry and everything like that, but I killed myself last year to try and make sure that I could prove myself to the industry again. Here I am, proving myself in this industry to all these other people that could care less about me or my family, proving myself, trying to make sure that I'm worthy to the giants, that they know my name, that I'm doing good, and I've sacrificed everything, my body, my mind, my mental health. I'm sacrificing again. I'm just wearing a different hat. I'm a real estate agent, but I'm doing the same exact actions that I was doing in the electrical world. And so I realized at that moment, it has to stop. You may not, if you don't kill yourself and sacrifice, you may not make the money that the giants in our industry make. That's fine. You got to be okay with that because there's something more important. And I promise you, I may not make that money. That's okay. I'm fine with that. My family gets my time, and the time that I spend on my work, that is the amount of time that I'm allowing myself to give to that, because at the end of the day, if I sacrifice into my family's time that I need to allot to them, I'll never get it back. I'll never get it back. But what I wanted to get at is that I kept trying to define myself by what I was doing. I am a real estate agent. I am an electrician. I am a father. I am a this, right? You can do that. You can sit there and tell yourself that you are these things, but those things do not define you, right? They really and truly don't. It's easy to say this is what I am, right? But
Not
on
who
this,
I am.
yes, on this journey that I'm on now, I am learning every single day who I am. What kind of a person am I? And there's, like you say, it's lonely. It can be bitter and it can be lonely, but I am so sick of trying to define myself in whatever industry I'm working in because I think that they need to give me approval.
Right.
And I've learned, man, I've really learned that, like, regardless of if they give you that approval, things can change in a moment. And that approval means dog shit. It means nothing in any industry, right? You're only as good as what you can put forth in that single day. And I'm starting to learn that it's not important as who's defining you or what you do, it's who you are.
Yeah.
And that's taken me a long time. 3 years to the day. I listened to that same song last night because I was coming in here and I was like, I'm going to just see if I talk about this, does it make me want to break down? And I put it on. My son's never heard the song. We're driving to soccer practice, right? And like we're driving into town. The clouds are, it's like God parted the clouds and there's like rays coming down. It's very, alpenglow and beautiful. And I heard the song and I just smiled. I genuinely from ear to ear, I smiled. I didn't get sad. I didn't get confused. I didn't get anything other than like, all right, man, I don't know what you're doing, but you're on the right path.
But yeah,
I can't define what that's going to look like in 2 years. I have no idea. None of us really do. And that's the thing is like, we don't know. All you have is right now, right this moment to do something. And if it's not good, then why are you doing it?
Right.
If you don't get enjoyment, then why are you doing it? And I'm sure people are going to hear this and go, well, it must be easy for you. Maybe you've got money or whatever. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, daddy. Paycheck to fucking paycheck. But I'm smiling.
Yeah. Do you think that's a better definition then of, I'm trying to think how to define that difference between what you are and who you are. Like you kind of touched on that. It seems to me like a theme there might be the way you feel is the difference. Because trying to think about how you would explain like who you are versus what you do or what you are or whatever it might be. And I think at least, for me personally on my journey, which has been, somewhat similar, a lot of it has been like, do I feel happy?
Yeah.
At least like, do I feel fulfilled?
Sure.
Or, feel like I have energy. There's that. And I think just so you know, I want you to know that my hat is off to you in so many ways. Because what you've done with your podcast, what you've done in general with just the life that you're living, but especially with your podcast is that you've given people a space to tell their story. And I love when we were talking about the We Built an Empire, the idea behind it. And you were just telling me that basically everybody has a story to tell, which I think is so neat. But you've also given people a space to open up and be authentic and vulnerable and kind of let it out. And it's really therapeutic in a lot of ways, which I think is fascinating. Because, I think too, like that idea of who you are versus what you are and how you feel. A lot of what I think has gone on is trying to figure out this formula or whatever it is, like the variables that help people feel better, measure success on that. And I think, and especially one of the things I especially appreciate about what you've done, and I think it really hit home for me, kind of the space that you've created when you had your episode with Jeremy. You guys talked about ketamine and, his story and all of that stuff. I just think it was one of those episodes that really moved me. It inspired me.
Sure.
Because especially male mental health, I think, mental health in general is stigmatized and we're working past it as a culture. But I think male mental health especially is hard because of masculinity and, you know, these ideas of like grin and bear it and tough it out and, you know, get it done or whatever it might be. And then that idea, have you ever heard that quote that most men lead lives of quiet desperation? And I just think that it's so powerful when somebody like you has the courage to say, I'm living a life of desperation and I'm going to not do that anymore. Yeah. Which in a lot, you know, because like what's harder, you know, to keep living the life of desperation or to get out of that comfort zone and make the change. Yeah. It's like that there, I don't know if you've ever seen the saying or not, but it's like pick your hard, right? Like marriage is hard, divorce is hard. Choose your hard. Being fat is hard, being in shape is hard. Choose your hard. Being broke is hard, being rich is hard. Choose your hard, like, you know, whatever. But I think that, you know, in your case, it's like hard to stay in Texas, hard to keep doing what you're doing there, but it's also really hard to come back. And I want to hear more about the thought process behind that. Like, do you feel like that moving to Texas was an attempt at a start over? Were you running away? Were you?
Yeah. I mean, realistically, so like I was saying, my brother and I had a smaller company, just him and I turning wrenches. And so we got an opportunity to go up to this big project. It was a lighting replacement project on a 50,000 square foot home in Ridgeway. And so we worked for this company, Williams Electric. Matt Williams is a great guy, great friend. And in that same time frame, you know, he does a lot of very, very high profile homes for electricity, you know, for electrical work or electrical services in the Telluride market and surrounding areas, right? So he actually was awarded the contract for Oprah, and they gave me an opportunity to go up and manage the electrical for that job. It's a monster house, 6-year build out. And so I went up there and we looked at it and it was like I was ready to go to work for them, you know, and what they offered me was okay. It wasn't life-changing money. It was just okay. And honestly, got a call from a really good friend of mine. And he was like, hey, I kind of need some, you know, I had previously worked for BP in years past. I was an employee and I quit because I didn't like all the red tape, right? It's just not meant for me. And anyways, got a call from one of my buddies that was currently still employed with BP and was like, hey, you should come to Texas. And so we started thinking about it. And then I'm like, all right, well, what is it going to pay? And all this is like, holy shit, that's a lot of money, you know? But all this time, it's like, I still hadn't addressed the issues, right? You know, and so when this opportunity came up, it was the original plan was to go to Texas for 3 years and come back and, you know, be back to a financially solvent scenario. And that was the reality. That's what we were going to do. And it made sense on paper. But again, these decisions are happening. And when you're making decisions, I'm very much, you know, a huge proponent. Like, I don't believe in The Secret or anything, but the laws of attraction are pretty apparent at times. And I think that they are because when you are so attracted to one specific thing, everything else takes a back burner. If you're focused on that laser beam in on something, everything else is over here. So what's going to naturally happen? You're going to focus all your time and your energy towards that thing. So the same thing happened with Texas with me. It was like, okay, boom, trigger happens. All right, well, money's there and we're going to make a move and but I wasn't addressing the issues of like, I still felt like an absolute failure, right? And so when we got to Texas, like I was saying, the money was masking everything. We felt great. We had a decent house. We ended up buying a house there, and you know, it was all good. But it was the moment of when it slowed down. When all of a sudden I had to start. How do I be present in my thoughts when I'm only working 3.5 days a week?
It's not enough.
You know, it's like, oh my God, I got to be here for my family. And I wasn't right. And I actually was working out heavily down there, and I got down to 192 pounds. I was looking really good. I was feeling good, sort of, but I wasn't addressing this part. I wasn't addressing the head, you know, I wasn't addressing the thoughts I was having, you know? And so it was just like, I had to start to deal with that. And then that deal with that song, and like all of a sudden all these emotions coming out of nowhere. And my wife always teases me. Like, I'm just not emotional. I'll cry at movies. And I was like crying at movies. I was like getting up off the couch, just like my kids wouldn't see me, like my tears. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing, man? You know, and it's hard as a father. You know, I mean, it's not, you know, you should be able to comfortably show those emotions to your children, because you need to let them know that it's okay at certain times to have those emotions, and you shouldn't be ashamed of those. But it's hard when you're not taught that as a child. It's hard when you don't know how to deal with those emotions as an adult, to all of a sudden be in front of your kids and your family and like you're crying like a baby over a movie where a dog died, like, and so it just started really weighing on me. It was like things changing within the organization. And it was just like, what the fuck am I doing here? I don't want to be here. I knew it. I don't want to be here. I'm not enjoying this life. And that was the biggest like caveat that made me want to move. But I didn't have a plan, right? I didn't have a plan of attack. I wasn't sure how I was getting back here. I just knew we needed to be home. And, thank God for my mother and father-in-law. They let us come back. We stayed with them in a bedroom that had its own bathroom. And we lived there for 10 months while we could kind of get back here and figure out life and just get things going again. But yeah, it was.
When did you feel like that whole idea of having to prove yourself or, apologize or whatever, however you explained it a few different ways, but was that still a reality when you came back and started back in real estate? Or did you feel like you kind of got past that and you were doing it for you at that point?
No, it's still prevalent every day. It always is knocking at the back door of me. I have lived my entire life as the underdog, and I kind of like it. It gives me this fire. It gives me the thing in the song, right, that made me break down, is to be able to turn back. Like, if you don't believe in me, like, I'll fucking show you.
Yeah.
I'll fucking show you. And the thing of it is like, there's a lot of haters out there, right? You know who you are. If you happen to listen, you know who you are. Tell me one time I didn't prove you wrong.
Yeah.
Tell me one time I didn't prove you wrong. So I like being the underdog. I like that challenge. But I also like not having to define myself by proving myself to you. Mm. And so that's where I'm still learning every single day. So it's like,
use it as the fuel, use it as the fire, but not as the measurement.
Yeah. Your measurement is not to prove. It's self-worth. Self-worth. And that's what I didn't realize. I'm always trying to look for achievements or accolades from other people or the industry or, financial accolades, right? Like we had the millions of dollars in our company's bank account. Like, I've been there, man. Like, when you can go down and buy 10 trucks from Durango Motor Company in one day, like, that really happened. I'm not worried about that stuff. Like, yes, do I wish I had a little bit of a cushion just like every other American in this world? Hell yeah, absolutely. But I'm not going to let it define me. That measurable accolade will come and go. Trust me. I've made it. I've lost it. I've made it. And I'm back down to the bottom. It's just money. I'm sick of defining myself by that fucking accolade.
Yeah.
There's something more in life. And so, yes, to answer the question, it's always knocking at the back door of like trying to prove myself, and a weird thing, I was working with this digital agency for a little while, trying to build a website and trying to do some things like that. It ultimately didn't work out. Like, we just kind of, I was still dealing with some mental stuff. I needed to get through on my own, right? I wasn't ready to do this, but they're great people. It was really funny because she told me, I showed up to an event. So real quick, just a little, let me preface this. So I got this set of tattoos when I was 18 years old, right? I was in a rock band. We were traveling the West Coast. We were playing music. That's what I wanted to do. Like that was at that point who I was defining myself as. You are a singer in a rock band, and this is who you are. This is what you want to do. And I didn't get these because of that. I got these just because I simply wanted them. But when we found out that we were having a child, I went into freak out mode. You got to get a job. You got to be serious. You got to get a career. You need to make money to provide for your kid and your family. The games it's done. You got to be serious. And I started to cover up my tattoos because still, even in this world, but especially like with the older demographic in the oil and gas world, those guys are running shit. They're in the office. They're doing stuff. They judge you. They may not say it to your face. They see you covered in tattoos. You're immediately less intelligent.
A little lower, yeah.
Immediately less intelligent, regardless of your actual capacity. And so I started to cover them up. I covered my tattoos for almost 10 years. 10 years. I wore a short sleeve shirt, and when I was finally the owner of Monarch Energy Group, was my previous company. And I wore a short sleeve shirt, nice dress shirt. My guys came in and they're like, whoa, you have tattoos. And I was like, I immediately went on the defense, and I will not forget the conversation. I said this to one of my guys. It was like, this doesn't change our relationship at all. You understand that? I'm still your boss. We are friendly with each other. This doesn't change. And I was like, why did I even have to do that? And so anyways, so Kelsey Parks was, she was the digital person that I was working with. And I showed up to this meeting and she's like, yeah, you should rock your tattoos. Like, I feel like that's a part of who you are. Like that, you did that for a reason. Maybe it's a past life, but like, why are you hiding those all the time? And so from day one on the podcast, actually in 2 episodes, but I did have my sleeves pulled up and it was a little bit chilly in the garage when we first started. I've always made it a point to show my tattoos, no matter what, because in that moment when I'm in front of the guest, I want to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And this sometimes makes me feel ashamed, depending on the scenario. Because again, in my brain, I'm trying to prove myself to somebody, right? And I've gone to listing presentations with millionaires to get a home and shown up with short sleeve shirts, because like, if you don't do that, you're defeating everything you're trying to get better from. And I didn't get that appointment, and that's okay. I didn't get that listing because I know that there was judgment. I know it. And that's all right. That person has their right to judge that person based on looks. It's going to happen every single day. But I made this decision when I was 18. That's 20 years ago. I can't get away from this decision. It is who I am. So if I don't embrace it and I don't become okay with that, in society, in the world, then I'm not fixing the problem. I'm not addressing the problem. Now, there's definitely certain times where, I will go talk to a specific person or something like that. And I do wear long sleeves sometimes because I enjoy long sleeves. I like dressing in a nice dress shirt. But there's other times where I've purposely,
I was gonna say, almost like on principle,
like, look, I want you to judge me on the work that I'm going to do. Not on that, but that's a hurdle because every book is judged by its cover, no matter who you are, no matter how much, openness to the world and society you have, you will judge that person because you're going to be like, maybe it's like, oh, oof, why would he have done that? Well, it's because I was fucking 18 in a rock band and I didn't realize that I was going to be talking to a millionaire trying to sell a $10 million home in Telluride. You know what I mean? And so, but again, if I hide it from them, I'm hiding it from myself. I'm not being who I am. So on the podcast, like, absolutely. Like I'm either always in a short sleeve shirt. Sometimes I got my backwards hat on, and sometimes my sleeves are rolled up, and it's just me. And that has been something, the podcast honestly has been the biggest healing mechanism that I've ever experienced. Because I think talking to people is truly a cathartic feeling, and you walk away with something from every single conversation, especially when it's long form. You get into the rhythmic cadence of talking, right? Everybody settles down from the beginning of an episode to the end of it. They kind of just get into this like fluid, rhythmic, almost like meditative state. And there's a lot of science and data behind that. And so I just want to be real on the podcast, on anybody's podcast. So that way that you know me, I know you, and the world, it's like I don't have anything to offer much more than what I can say, but this is who I am, take it or leave it. And at least at that point, when I leave this table today, I know that I was honest with myself, right? I'm not trying to prove my worth to anybody else out there.
Well, I was going to say, which is probably a healthier measurement than like seeking approval. You know what I mean? Like, you know that you were true to yourself. You know that you gave it your best or whatever. When it comes to the podcast being therapeutic, I'm curious your perspective because, and just to backtrack briefly, but a few things just to kind of tee up the question. But one is I'm learning how difficult hosting a podcast is. So I want you to know that you're incredibly talented in that world.
Thank you.
I even told my wife after I was on your show, I was like, man, it was like, kind of felt like it was therapy. Like, I don't know why, but it felt like the environment was on point. You guided the conversation in a really, you guided it just enough. It gave me space to talk, and like, you just nailed like all of it. You were yourself. And by the way, I think the tattoos and the backwards hat are fantastic in a podcast setting and anywhere, but it makes a cool vibe for the podcast. But I'm curious your perspective, speaking of the podcast as a mechanism to healing or, kind of being therapeutic or whatever. I like to think that it's a contributing factor to smiling again. Do you find that you're getting that because you're talking or because you're listening?
I think it's both. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have commented, like, I sometimes will go off on a tangent even as a host. And a lot of times the guest doesn't necessarily get where I'm going with it. And I don't mean like a tangent, like steering the conversation, but what I'm trying to do is give a bed of commonality, to say like, hey, we're cut from a similar cloth here.
Like, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And I'll give that bed, but oftentimes you'll see the guests kind of get a little bit like nervous and then they calm into it. So I talk more sometimes, depending on the guest and how engaged they are, than other podcast hosts. A lot of podcast hosts are like questioning and the guest like really talks about it. Like the people are tuning in for the guest, not the host reality. But, so it does work both ways. It's like sometimes a guest will say something and it'll spark something that you didn't intend to say, like for instance, when I had you on, I had just gone through a horrific falling out with my parents. I never had the intention of saying that on air. But if somebody asks me something, unless I'm going to like accidentally harm someone's character publicly or something, I will refrain from saying it, or I'll cut it in post or something like that. But on that podcast, it's different. Like, I don't know how you feel here, but you get into my room, you can speak to it. It's like, feels like we're sitting down about to smoke cigars, and
it feels intimate.
It's very like, it's just me and you here, right? Nobody else is involved. And sometimes that conversation like brings things forward, but a lot of times it is talking it out loud, even if that's into an echo chamber. If you're just doing a solo talking head episode, saying that stuff, it's not like you've been bottling it up, but it's almost like I often, and I don't know if I'm weird to do this, but I often find myself talking to myself, working out loud, articulating things, getting through problems, but talking physically to myself as like almost an outer body. I mean, not like, come on, Kyle, you fucking pussy, get away, nothing like that, but like talking as if I'm talking to a human being here. I'm working through strategies and working through problems in my head. And so that helps me get through to an end result oftentimes. But talking to a if you're the host and it's a guest, I'm usually saying something so I can let them talk back. Now, sure. I don't ever want somebody to feel like I'm pulling a rope. If you don't feel like it, we're going to go this way. And we might come back there, but we might not. The conversation is going to go here. But I will say, I think personally, if you listen to, like, let's just say, there's a certain timbre with people's vocal cords, right? The kilohertz that we talk at is therapeutic. The cadence that certain people speak at is therapeutic. And so when you're talking, you are hearing your inner ear speak, right? Usually your mind's going fast enough to where you're not actually, like, you can't talk yourself into your own meditation, right? In a sense. But when other people are talking back to you, sometimes they'll say things that they didn't realize they were about to say, and I've had that happen on a few episodes. Like you talk about Jeremy's episode. That's an 1 and 48-minute episode. He opened up. I knew Jeremy only from professional interactions with his company. Great company. Had no knowledge of his divorce, had no knowledge of his situation, had no knowledge that he had been through ketamine treatments.
So all that came out authentic, like organically?
I didn't even press the question. It just came up. And the thing of that is, though, Ben, is like that whole interaction, that start to finish talk of ketamine is 17 minutes out of an hour. And it's over an hour and a half episode. I think it's an 1 and 48, like I said. But anyways, that's the biggest spike in the episode, And so it's weird. Usually that happens. The same thing happened with Brandon.
Yeah.
And that was different. We had planned to talk about those things. And then when he came in, he didn't feel comfortable talking about those things. And absolutely, as the host, Shit, yeah. I'm so thankful that I had done enough research on him to talk about like interesting stuff to still have a conversation, because my plan was to talk about everything that he wanted to talk about. I didn't bring it up. I said one thing, right, about, because I do have people in the emergency medical field as well. And, I have the stress there. And then whatever I said, bam, like a fucking light switch. It caused him to say something. And the way he said it, we both cried on camera because it was brutal. And that little sliver, also the most ticks in the video, because it impacted people, but it was less than 10 minutes that we even talked about that. And we didn't go into grave detail, but you could tell that him not being able to complete his sentence and holding back tears and finally tearing was so emotional to him that it mattered.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. I've read certain things about having long form conversation and talking to people, that it does just, it's a calming effect. And it has a way of allowing you to build trust with one another. And when you build trust with one another, sometimes you allow yourself to say things that you wouldn't otherwise be comfortable talking about.
Right.
And so that's why I personally think that it is therapeutic, because I've seen it. I've seen it this close to people. I've seen people say something that they did not want to say and it have an impact. Like I could watch them just go like, whoa, I just said that to either one person or thousands of people.
Right.
And I didn't care in the moment because I needed it to get off of me so bad. And it's like, and being able to watch that as a host, I hope and pray that you get that opportunity, because it is so, and then again, I go back to the name of, we built an empire. And, Chacho Taylor, a mutual friend of ours, I love him to death. He called me the other day and we were talking about the name, and he's so direct on certain things. You know what I'm saying? Like his character, he's just like, I love the name. The name is perfect for what you're doing. I was like, why? He's like, because it's a community. Like you're building a community, and you'll talk to like the lunch lady, and it doesn't matter, because everybody's got something to tell. Everybody has, and it may not be a story to tell, but it may be that they have something that I can help them get that weight off for a second. Because in me trying to get that weight off your shoulders, it also makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Because we're getting to it together. I'm going to say something to you that's inevitably going to make me feel whole inside. And whatever that is, again, creating that commonality, that bed. I may have to say something totally vulnerable that I didn't want to talk about, but I know that you need something to land on down here so that you know that we're in the safe place, that we can talk. And so by me creating that as a host, inevitably somebody, they just relax, and it's just like a breath, and you can see it. Usually it's about minute 36 they start to open up, and it's like, it's amazing. It really is. And I've talked, I would say better than 75% of the guests have at the end of it been like, man, I forgot the cameras were here. I forgot we were actually recording a podcast. And they're like, well, that was really like relieving, and it's kind of like, it is. I don't know why, but it is.
So I've got a philosophy. This is just a Benism, but the most direct and guaranteed way to a fulfilling life is through serving others. And so I call it selfish service. It's like, if you need help, go help. Or, and we have a philosophy at the business that's called giver's gain, which should basically like add value and you'll win in return. But it sounds to me like the experience on the podcast is similar in that sense, that like you're getting some fulfillment and some therapeutic benefits from allowing others the space to have their own, moments, which, and it speaks to, I just think it's really neat to see it convey in the form of a podcast. And it couldn't happen though if you weren't who you are and you didn't have the vulnerability that you bring to the table, the authenticity. I also think the physical space helps. You've done an amazing job, but it's really neat for me to hear that philosophy I have of like selfish service. It's why I volunteer on the fire department for me. Like I go help somebody and I feel good, which I know is contradicting. But that's what I was interested about with your experience on the podcast, because, you hear a lot about talk therapy. And I think that, coming back to like men's mental health and things like that, I don't know that I would ever talk to a therapist, but I certainly like talking. Certainly like this conversation. This certainly feels therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's, it sounds to me like that's a whole lot of it. And then I wonder too if even like forming, and I don't know if meaningful relationships is the best way to, because it's not like you're like best friends with every guest and, get invited to their birthday. Like, it's not, but I do think that you're forming real relationships. Like at least even if nothing else, for the time that they're on the show, it's you and them. It's intimate in a lot of ways. It's raw. I think there's some power in that too, because you start to get perspective that, while these journeys that we're on are lonely, we're not alone.
Sure. Yeah.
Everybody is working on things or dealing with things or has a story to tell or whatever it might be. So I wonder, do you feel like the connections are contributing to it as well?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think any kind of long form conversation, like if you think back in your life to times where you weren't talking to a best friend or even like let's say a 4-tier friend. I mean, tiers, like, you have your immediate friends and family, right? And they've known them for 20 years. Then you got that second tier, and then you got the work relation tier where you might have had a couple drinks at a party before, but you're not going to tell them that, your kid's middle name, and then so how many times with a 3rd tier or a 4th tier friend have you ever sat and had a single conversation with them with no one else interrupting you or distracting you for an hour and 45 minutes? Never. So having done it for a little while, I believe that inherently you start to know certain things about that person. You at least understand their cadence, you understand their rhythm, you understand their clicks, their twerks, are they nervous, are they this, are they settling down? Like you start to kind of get almost a relationship with them at an energy level, right? And so sometimes you strike up a bond with that guest and it does carry into the outside world, like you and Cody and Chacho. And you guys are legitimate friends, and we may not call each other, but I walked in here and gave you a hug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's certain guests that it does kind of carry past, cause you're like, whoa, all right, there's something more to this. Right. And the world's going to tell you that, but I do think that no matter what, almost every guest I give a hug to when they come in, and the hug when they leave is better. And so I don't know if I'm ever going to talk to that person again, but I do know that time we had will never be replaced.
Yeah. I relate to that in a big way. So a lot of the work we do is video production. And by nature, a lot of what I have to do sometimes is longer form interviews. But it's been interesting for me because it's usually with a task in mind. Like we'll sit down with somebody and I'll conduct an interview, but I'm after a soundbite. Like we'll talk for an hour because I'm making a documentary, but I need 3 lines.
Yeah. And
I'm guiding it intentionally and things like that. I'm learning, and sometimes we'll have to be like, well, can you say it this way? Or it's a little bit different. But I do feel that, and I've actually loved the video production side of my business for those reasons, because I've told my team even in the past that, because it's tangible, it's real, and it creates relationships. So even if, whatever the revenue is or whatever, it doesn't matter. But sitting down in front of somebody and talking to them, to your point, actually being present, I think is getting even more rare anymore. Also, you think about the saturated world that we're living in with distractions and cell phones and media. It's like you sit with I sit with my wife and we turn on the show. We built an empire podcast on YouTube.
Yeah, I bet you.
And then I sit and I watch it on my phone while, like multiple devices going on. And so I don't know. I just think it's really neat to hear it's a mutually beneficial experience to have the long form conversations. Cause I know it sure helped me sitting and chatting with you. It was cool. I've been, in fact, afterwards I was like trying to pursue being on more shows. And I got on another podcast in Salt Lake, but I realized that the best way to do that is just start one, Yeah.
It's hard, Chacho and myself and you have kind of been talking back and forth about, building a kind of a podcast circuit, and I thought, after his hats off to him, man. I just want to give Chacho a shout out. I love him to death, but he gave me the best positive criticism after the first time he was on the show. And I was like, he listened to it a couple of times in a row, and, he called me and he's like, hey man, can I talk to him? I'm like, oh dude, yeah, what's going on? I was like, did I leave something in production that's going to like ruin your life? Yeah. And he's like, no. He's like, when you're asking a question, like when you're interviewing, like just remember to ask it 3 times, 3 different ways. Especially like if you ask it the first way and you get the answer you want, congratulations. Ask it again, ask it a 3rd time, right? And so I really try to implement that. And so the last time he came on on my show to promote the book,
I'm talking to him on Monday. So I'm writing down this advice.
Yeah, is he coming in person?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So
I have a tangent there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he was like, ask that question, ask a question 3 times. And really each time you're going to pull back a layer of the onion and you're going to get down eventually, to the core. And so I did it in that episode. And, I asked him, what was the pinnacle moment that made you change to not go down the same path as your father? And he answered something, right? It was book related. Asked it again in a different framework, right? And he didn't. Asked it finally the 3rd time. And inherently, he wasn't trying to like block. He's open and honest as anybody I've ever talked to. But it's just like the conversation wasn't there yet. It wasn't ready to answer the question as bluntly as when I asked it the 3rd time. And he answered it with absolute conviction because I think he had already said this and it was like, no, that wasn't the reason. I already said that wasn't the reason. And so when I asked him, he's like, I didn't want to let my grandmother and my grandfather down. And I was like, boom, motherfucker. You took your own advice and we nailed it, So my hat's off to him because, and I do try and, I can't listen to every episode because realistically, when you're editing post-production, I've listened to that episode by the time it releases 15 times over, right? So I can listen to them. Sometimes, I do go back and be like, oh, did I do this? But I do listen to try and learn because my whole thing is like, if you're going to have somebody come in and give you their time, their physical time, you owe it to yourself, them, and the audience to do the absolute best you can do. Yeah. I know that I'm not a great interviewer, but I'm going to get better. And so every time I try and learn something, and you can't always practice what you learn on the very next guest because it changes, right? There's always these variables, and you don't know how that person's going to interact. But sometimes you get to be like, think about, okay, what did I do last time that I want to change just slightly, just ever so much? And I found myself like, I hate it, but I shouldn't say this. How should I say this?
Say it.
If I'm less enthused with the way a conversation is going, sometimes you'll find me on my podcast going, And it's not that I'm not paying attention.
Now I'm going to watch my episode.
I'm thinking of where we need to take the conversation to so that way that I can pull something out of you that I know you need to release. And so sometimes
you're trying to multitask.
Yeah, always. I'm always one question ahead, Always. You have to be, because then if they answer it and they're done, like a lot of people question, answer. Where's the next question? I answered your question, right? That's what we want out of society. You gave me a math problem. I solved it. Where's the next one? And so they're less willing to keep going. Some guests aren't. They'll talk until they're blue in the face. But some are like, okay, I answered it. And then you're like, oh shit, I wasn't ready for the next one, right? Well, the audience is going to know that. They're going to know you weren't one step ahead. So if sometimes I'll hear myself being like, and then I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, that is so, I hate if I hear a show like that, especially my own. I'm like, do not. So I'm openly trying to stop doing that. And it's like a little subtle tick, when your brain's working. So what I started to do now is, like, sometimes if the guest is talking, I'll just do this. And by me keeping my hand there,
it's a reminder.
Stop saying, And eventually my brain will not say that anymore. But even Joe Rogan has his ticks. He'll go, yeah. And he's already on the next question. He's intrigued by what you just said, and his brain's running. You can't help it as a guest. We're having a conversation. If you say something, I'm like, I want to jump in, but in a podcast, you can't.
Right.
You can't. You got to let that person complete what they're saying, and hopefully they didn't say something else that made your brain run in another direction, because I want to get back there. So.
Well, and what I'm finding too is, and I'm so bad at this, but I'm learning, and it's fun because I think. And it's a lot of, we talk about this journey, but it's fun for me to hear, like, you're trying to better yourself in all of these different aspects of life, podcast hosting being one of them. And I'm finding the similar thing. Like I listened back, I had my sister on last week and I listened back to our episode and my mic's way louder than hers. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah.
I'm all bummed out and self-conscious about it. So now mine's turned down today and I'm sure it'll be lower than yours and whatever.
Just fix it in
and
post.
I say, a lot. So I'm trying to, but it's cool because I'm finding that it's giving me another way to improve. Like I've got another challenge ahead of me now. And what I'm finding is that, and obviously this will evolve because I'm a rookie. I'm learning a ton from you even right now. But like trying to have authentic, like truly engaged conversations is I think the best approach, even if you're saying or whatever, because then I think in podcasting, especially, not interrupting or not jumping in is challenging. Like even today, you've said like 5 or 6 things that I've been like, ooh, we could dive in on that. Yeah. Ooh, we could dive in on that. And then we can't because we only have so much time and we're having one conversation. So I can totally see the challenge in it and, trying to get better at it and perfecting the craft. But I also think that it speaks to who you are in holistically as this trying to improve, version of yourself. And it's just so fun to see.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun to be a part of, like in your, your outer body out here watching yourself do stupid shit most of the times, to see yourself kind of progress and like, be like, okay, that was good.
Do you like where you are? Do you like who you are?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. The thing of it is like, I absolutely do. I love this life. I really do. I don't have it figured out by any means, just like the rest of us. And I do struggle with it, but I do like who I am as long as I can be. I heard something the other day, and I think this actually would sum up what I'm trying to say. It was like, if you go into a room and things are not right, be a strong man. Like, right. And what they meant by that was like, do the right things. Be comfortable with your actions. Don't just give in to be associated with the crowd. And that was kind of a good way of like, I'm still going through this life and kind of, we're always kind of, do we fall in line? Do we toe the party line? Are we just going to be in the crowd and just be a member of it? Or are we going to be honorable in our mind and our thoughts and be the person that, whether you're, a God-fearing human being, be the person that, some people say that God created. And not that that can't change, but it's like, be the person that you're supposed to be, And I don't mean go out there and like, if you love to act a fool, not every room is meant for you to act a fool.
Maybe suppress that a little. Yeah.
But, if you know something's wrong, then don't be a part of that. If you don't feel comfortable calling out that something that's wrong, or that doesn't align with you or your beliefs, or that doesn't align with who you want to be or where you're trying to get on this journey, then just simply don't be a part of it. You don't got to go in and be like, you're a liar, dude. This guy's a liar. You just, remove yourself from the situation. And so I go back to what that gentleman said. If you go into a room and something's wrong, then be a good man. And that's what I'm trying to be. You asked me, do you like who you are? Yeah, I do. But I do have to make sure that in my mind, am I being a good man? Am I being true to myself? Because that's hard. It's hard to be true to yourself in all aspects of life. But I'm trying, and I feel better now than I have in years. And I don't really. It's probably a multitude of things to kind of chalk it off to as to why that's happening, but. I can't like pinpoint one single thing. But yes, I do enjoy this life. Do I have a lot of room for improvement in every aspect? Absolutely. Father, husband, person in society, serviceman of a room. I'm horrible at that, because I think, I don't know if we share the same friend, but my good friend, Eric Nelson, he runs a podcast. He has a great investment business. He also owns an engineering firm here in town. He's one of the kindest souls I've ever met. Love him to death, genuinely speaking. And he exemplifies serviceman of a room every time I see him. Every single time I see him, he can walk into a room and make sure that room is better than when he left. And it might be just talking to one person or doing something, but he like gives himself. And I struggle with that. I think a lot of the time because I am an introvert, and maybe that's part of my tiny little micro success with the podcast world is because I am a little bit introverted, which is strange because I've played in front of thousands and thousands of people on a stage with a microphone. I'm not scared of being in front of people. But I found myself a lot of times, like especially like in an office space, I'll go in and I'm so focused, sit to my desk, do my thing. People are walking by. I don't give a shit. You're not in my world. You're not in my purview. I'm just over here doing my thing. Bam, bam, bam. And then I start to go, man, do these people just not like me? Like, what's wrong with them? Why are they assholes? Well, dude, you've never talked to them. You've never even acknowledged them in the coffee room, And I'm going, oh God, you haven't. But I get so distracted and my mind just goes hyper focused on a lot of things. And so, one of the big things that I struggle with, and I'm not good at it, is just servicing a room or servicing a friendship, just being a good person, generally speaking. I try to be, but I'm not infallible. It's like I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. And so as long as I think that I'm still trying to better myself in these areas, and I'll have pitfalls and failures along the way, I think then, I can say right now today that I do like who I am.
Yeah.
As long as I can keep telling myself that, like, you not only can you do better, but you have to do better, right? Because if you're I don't believe that you get to be that person in the room that just gets to be the asshole ever. Because then at some point people just go, oh yeah, he's just an asshole. Yeah, just deal with it. No, that's not right. It's not right. Whatever reason is making you be that asshole, it's not right for you to be that way to other people. They don't deserve it. In fact, you don't deserve it. And so it's like you have to constantly be bettering yourself. If you know that you're not good in certain environments, make sure that you're doing something to make that environment less of a scenario for you and the people that are around you.
It's the whole idea behind chasing greatness, is like this idea that we have to consistently be putting in effort to better ourselves. And so thank you so much for being vulnerable, sharing your story with me, for bettering yourself. I hope you know very sincerely what an impact you've made on my life, and I look up to you. And I just think it's like, I just hope you know that the things that you're doing, you have an audience, you're making an impact. I think it's amazing that you get a little bit of benefit out of it too, but you're doing way more good than you realize. And it's just neat. I mean, I've had conversations with Robel even about it, and it's just so cool to see you leaning into who you are and still getting better. Like hearing that this journey is still continuing, and it's just amazing. I hope you know how loudly I'm cheering for you, but also how grateful I am that I get to see what you're doing and that you're making the impact that you are. So I have a Inspired by Example shirt for you,
right.
Which now I think we might have to get a smaller size.
What size is it?
Because
lost a little bit of weight
because of
here.
the healthy the healthy journey that we're on. But seriously, Kyle, thank you so much, and very sincerely, more so than thank you for being on the show, obviously, but thank you for being you.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
Thank you for doing what you're doing, and don't stop.
I won't,
because
man.
the world needs
Appreciate
more
it.
people like you.
Appreciate you. Keep doing this. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't listened to the whole episodes. I started to, but I would just say, just like you said at the very beginning of this, consistency. People are going to hear it, and people will be influenced by it. So I appreciate you doing this. For anybody else listening, I just want to plug this real fast. Let's start a podcast community.
Yeah.
Realistically, let's do it.
I'm all in.
Love you, brother.
Love you, Kyle. Thank you.